Hello, today's video is about solving one variable equations and inequalities. The process of solving includes two steps. First, simplify both sides using PEMDAS, that's parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, and subtract. The second step is to isolate variable or solve, that means to get that variable by itself, by using PEMDAS backwards. So you're going to start with subtract, add, divide, multiply, exponents, and parentheses to undo anything that has been done to that variable that you are solving for. An example, 3w plus 1 in parentheses times 2 equals 2 in parentheses 17 minus 5w close parentheses. So the thing that we were talking about was PEMDAS backwards for simplifying both sides. Okay? So the first thing, parentheses. You got a set of parentheses here, and you have some over here. And obviously 3w and 1, they are not like terms, so we're going to get rid of the parentheses by distributing the 2 that's outside on both sides. So when you distribute, you get 6w plus 2 equals 2 times 17 is 34, and 2 times negative 5 is negative 10 with a w. Okay, so we've got the simplified part. We've already distributed. We got rid of the parentheses. There's nothing to add or subtract on either side. There's no like terms, and there's no exponents to deal with. No multiplication we can do on each side. So now we're going to do PEMDAS backwards so that we can start solving for the equation. Well, first off, we want to get one of the variables on both sides, or we want to get one of the variables on one side to the other side so that we can get the variables together. And so I always try to get my variable on the left. It's not necessarily that you have to, that's just what I like to do. And so we're going to start with adding or subtracting. We'll add 10w. Add 10w. Well, 6w and 10w are the only like terms that we have when we move it over. So we add the two together. We get 16w plus 2 is equal to 34. The next thing we're going to do here, we're still in the add or subtract stage because we're ultimately trying to solve for w. And so we want to look at what is with w that we want to get away from it. Well, we got a 2 here and we got a 16. And if we start with add or subtract, that's what's happening to it. There's an addition, and we're going to undo that addition by subtracting. So we get 16w is equal to 34 minus 2 is 32. And now we got some multiplication. We're in this stage right here. Multiply, divide. And the way we're going to undo multiplication is by dividing. So we'll divide both sides by 16. W equals 32 divided by 16 is 2. And then what I would like for you to get in the habit of doing is taking the 2 and plugging it back into the original. If we get 3 times 2, we get 6, plus 1 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. So this other side should also equal 14 when you plug that 2 in. So you get 5 times 2 is 10. 17 minus 10 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. And so both sides did equal 14 when you plugged it in. So the answer is correct. Another example that we have is an equation that only has letters. This is what we call a literal equation. Literal equation. That's an equation that has 2 or more letters in it. Well, this one has an S, an L, a W, and an H, and a repeating W and H. And so we want to solve this equation for W. So let's specify that. We're going to solve it for W. So the first thing we want to do, just like we were talking about earlier, we want to simplify both sides. There's obviously nothing we can do with this term over here. It's everything that's done to it can be done, but this term needs to have the 2L distributed into it. So when you do that, you get 2LW plus 2LH. Oop, not 2LW, I'm sorry about that. 2LH plus 2WH. And as you can see, we have two terms with W in it. So we want to try to combine those. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and start getting rid of the term without the W. And since it's being added to the two things, we will subtract it. We'll have to subtract it from the other side. Get S minus 2LH is equal to 2LW plus 2WH. And I know this has been a long time since you've probably seen this, but if we look at the two terms, there is a way that we can combine them. We can pull out the common factor that each of these have. And so you get 2L plus 2H. These are the things that they don't have in common. S minus 2LH on this other side. So now we've got 1W. It's being multiplied by 2L plus 2H. And we go back to that PEMDAS backwards still. The undoing of multiply is divide. So we're going to divide this side by 2L plus 2H. And we're going to divide this side by 2L plus 2H. This cancels out. And we get W is equal S minus 2LH divided by 2L plus 2H. And because no things have all things don't have a common factor, or all things don't have a like term that makes it possible to add them together, this is the simplified form of that equation being solved for W. Alright, moving on to the next thing. We're going to talk about some inequalities. That's whenever you have less than, greater than, less than or equal, or greater than or equal. The only difference between solving equations and inequalities is that you flip the sign if multiply or divide by negative. That's the only difference whenever you're solving equations and inequalities. Besides your answer, it will be a little bit different. Okay, so here's an example. We're trying to solve this inequality for x. And so we're going to do that PEMDAS backwards again. Both sides are already simplified. There's nothing we can do. So we're going to look at add, subtract, multiply, divide, exponents, and parentheses, and work it backwards. So add, subtract stage. There is a 6 here, so we're going to subtract it. We will subtract it. 3x divided by 4 is greater than 3 minus 6 is negative 3. Okay, and now x is being multiplied by a fraction 3/4. And so we can undo that fraction by multiplying by its reciprocal, and this is something that we did when we were solving for inverses. So we're going to multiply it by 4/3 on that side. It cancels out this side, and you get x is greater than, we can turn that into a fraction. There's a 3 on the top and a 3 on the bottom. Negative 4 divided by 1. So x is greater than negative 4. Okay, and one of the things we want to do is we want to check this. Let's think of a number that is really easy. For the most part, the easiest number to check is 0. So here we would ask ourselves, if we plug in 0, is it greater than negative 4? Well, yes it is. So we want to plug 0 into our original equation or original inequality, and we want to make sure that it is also a true statement. If it's true with our solution, then it should also be true with the original inequality. And if you plug that in, you get 3 times 0, which is 0. 0 divided by 4 is 0. 0 plus 6 is 6. 6 is greater than 3. So it is also true with the original. So x is greater than negative 4 is our solution. So that means any number that I plug into this inequality that is greater than negative 4 will be a solution. Here's our next example. We've got negative 2x minus 2 parentheses x plus 5 close parentheses is less than or equal to 2 close parentheses x minus 4 close parentheses. Okay, so this time we're going to have to simplify both sides. First, we're going to have to do PEMDAS in regular order to simplify. And then we'll come back and do it backwards to solve. Okay, so let's simplify it. We need to distribute this 2. We get negative 2x minus 2x minus 10 is less than or equal. We need to distribute this 2 as well. 2x minus 8. And then we have two x terms, so we can combine those like terms. Negative 2x and negative 2x is going to give me negative 4x minus 10 is less than or equal to 2x minus 8. Okay, we need to get our x's on the same side, so I'm going to subtract this 2x, subtract 2x. So I get negative 6x minus 10 is less than or equal to negative 8. Now I'm in that process of doing the add, subtract, multiply, divide, exponents or parentheses backwards. So I'm going to add this 10 away. Okay, I get negative 6x is less than or equal to positive 2. And now I'm dividing by negative 6. And what was that rule that we said? Yes, we're going to flip that inequality. We get x is greater than or equal to negative 1/3. Okay, so a number that's always real easy to check that's greater than a negative is 0. So we can plug in 0 into the original. Negative 2 times 0 is 0. So it cancels that one out. 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. And so the question is negative 10 going to be less than or equal to whatever we get over here when we plug in 0? So 0 minus 4 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. And yes, negative 10 is less than negative 8. So this is our solution right here. X is greater than or equal to negative 1/3. Okay, this concludes our lesson. I want you to come to class, be prepared to solve some more equations, solve some more inequalities. I want you to be prepared to talk about the differences, sorry, I got the wrong thing going here. Talk about the differences between equations and inequalities when you come to class on Tuesday and Wednesday next week. All right, y'all have a good weekend. Bye.